This is roughly an hour-long video of my walk south of the house where I'm renting an apartment, as far south as you would care to walk from this area on Castella in the Dalmatian coast. Castella probably just means castle in Croatian, and here you can see just how close I am from the water. I mean, this place is almost a waterfront property at this point. The water is very clean here. You don't really see that much garbage. If you watch my previous videos, I was really disappointed about the management of the Siam by the Thai government and the Thai king, who, by the way, hardly even spends any time in his own country. He's spending most of his time in Germany in the most luxurious environments such as Baden-Baden and so on. But in any case, this is the walk. I am living maybe a block and a half, or just 1 block away from the water. And this is winter. This is January. So you can see that the water is really clear, but obviously there are no tourists. There is nobody on the beach. I have seen one young man riding a bicycle, clearly renting it. So he was the only other tourist I have seen in the 3 weeks I have been here so far. You can see the kind of Italian architecture that was built here. Most of it is from the 16th, 17th century. These are basically just stones that the Italians found in the area, and they didn't even bother covering it with any kind of insulation. It's just pieces of stones put together. That's the kind of apartment I'm staying in. I really loved it. The moment I saw it on Airbnb, I thought I have to spend at least a month in this apartment. And it's kind of strange because it's a cool apartment in January, but it's not bad. I mean, the weather is really not bad. So far, I would say the coldest it has been was maybe upper 30s, but in the afternoon on a sunny day, it goes up to the mid 50s. And in the sun, it feels like in the lower 60s. So you really don't need to wear anything more than a hoodie or a long sleeve. Unfortunately, they have overall none of the sophistication of either the Italian, the Austrian, or the Hungarian. They don't have a pure greenway that is completely blocked from cars. You can see that the cars are parking all over the place. They are parking on the damn greenway, which is not something they should be doing, but I guess this is legal. And the way they are driving is just so intense. I have been almost run over by a car that darted into solid red light, driven by a young punk, obviously. Looked like mid-20s at best. So this is Italian architecture, but the Italians were kicked out. And if you look up the history of this thing, this was not a nice thing. It is true that when the Italians had the power, the control over the Dalmatian coast and Dalmatia itself, they treated the Slavs as second-class citizens or something like that, which I guess is actually reasonable because they don't have anywhere near the cultural sophistication of either the Italian or the Austrian or the Hungarian. But they were not kicked out, so Slavs were never kicked out. The Italians were kicked out, and that must have been pretty ugly because I don't think anybody would abandon an ancient territory, which the Italians had since Roman times. You saw the electric scooter there. Electric scooters are really popular, as they should be. But I only see the young men in their teens and 20s riding them. It seems like the middle-aged and the older crowd, they stick to the car, and I see a mountain bike here and there. This is all a greenway, by the way. You're not supposed to come here with a dog, but you are legal to ride a bicycle. A bicycle is legal everywhere on the sidewalks as well, which is kind of nice because of the insane driving that you see here. When you have a sunny day like this with hardly any wind, the place looks like an absolute paradise, although it is winter, so you can't go in the water. And by the way, looking at the water, the beaches are very narrow and they are covered with pebbles. Also, when you look in the water, it's really clean, and that's nice, but this is not a sandy beach. There are like rounded rocks and algae covered rocks and pebbles and gravel everywhere. So I'm not sure how comfortable it might be to go in. I don't know. I really don't know. There are all these restaurants and beach bars, but not nearly as fancy as in Ragusa. Ragusa is the place the Slavs call Dubrovnik. The Italian name for it is Ragusa. It is much more substantial than this place. I think that was a motorized bicycle, believe it or not. It was a bicycle that had a gasoline engine attached to it. I have seen a very small number of those even in New York. Some companies still sell these weird bicycle kits, like a small gasoline engine, and you attach it to the bike. It's really stupid to use it, except that you don't have the range anxiety of an electrified bicycle. But still, I think it's just very noisy and an ugly thing to do. There seems to be somebody had another electric device. That's the real positive thing that I saw here. Lots of electric scooters. That's definitely a good thing. But they are not available for rental. It's not like Budapest. I mean, this place has nowhere near the sophistication of Budapest or Vienna. You cannot rent electrics. There aren't really any walking zones. I would say south of the main road, these few blocks on the beach should be entirely free of cars. I would allow the residents who live here to have cars, but I would seriously charge them for it to discourage the use of it. It would be so beautiful. The cuisine is practically non-existent. Croat cuisine is no match to the treasures of mostly Hungary and Italy. The Austrians are basically South Germans who are mixed with both Hungarian and Slavic, but they got their sophistication with the food and everything from the Italian and Hungarian influences. By themselves, the Germans are no better. They just have these slabs of meat and really boring dessert. They can't really make the kind of magic and artistry that is the hallmark of most of the Italian, Hungarian cuisines. But they have excellent chocolate. Now down here in today's Dalmatia, which is owned by Croatia, you can actually get a lot of Austrian and Swiss chocolates and German and Austrian beers for not a lot of money. This place is actually surprisingly cheap. This whole area, Castella, south of Splata, or Split, as the Slavs call it. Split is an ancient Roman domain. This is an area where Diocletian built a significant and pretty large palace and a complex surrounding it with protecting walls and everything. Most of the palace is now just a bunch of ruins, and I have posted a bunch of short videos on that area, not really just on this channel, but also if you click on the link below and go over to my personal channel, that's where I post stuff that is not related to transportation at all. Here you can see that the beach breaks up here and there, so there isn't a greenway to cover the entire length, but you have to go back and walk on the regular roads for a while before you can get back on the beach. This is something that I would also want to see fixed. There should be one clear greenway. Lots of BMW cars here, my God. Half the population drives BMWs, probably because they are punks. BMW drivers are aggressive, no question about it. You can see the mountains in the background. This low-lying area is what the Italians really colonized from beginning with the Roman times. But going north of here, they would have come across with mostly the German and later on the Hun land armies. And the Italians are excellent at marine warfare. More electric scooters coming up here. But they don't have much talent or experience with fighting on land. They did manage to conquer some during Roman time, but after the Roman Empire collapsed, that was no longer the case. So when you look at Renaissance Italy, this area was possessed by Venice, and Venice was mostly a sea power. It was never a land power. If you want to know how the Turks eventually destroyed Venice and how they broke the control of Venice over the Eastern Mediterranean, the Turks never had the talent to challenge the Italians on the sea. They did not have the technology, so the Turkish Sultan started to kidnap Italian engineers until he was able to reproduce a ship like the ships of Venice. And that was when, with far greater volume, they were able to overcome Venice and match their technological sophistication. Obviously, the Turks had way more wealth and much more territory than the Venetians, who were really just spread around on the coastline from what is Venice now all the way up here and even further down. It goes even beyond Ragusa. Now, today, all of Dalmatia is Croatian territory. So if you look on the map and you look up Croatia, you'll see how far the Italians controlled the coast, but only the coast. They had no ability to go further anywhere inland, because that would have meant encountering the Hungarian and possibly Austrian land armies. There was some war against the Austrians, mostly in the Alps in World War I. And that was a terrible war. You had to do mountain climbing and all that. It didn't really go anywhere. The borders didn't really go anywhere. But at the end of World War I, South Tyrol was awarded by the winners of the war to the Italians. You see that the vegetation is largely subtropical. There are palm trees here that can survive the winter. The winter never goes down to freezing, and these are trees that can tolerate that much. Unfortunately, the people here are cutting the trees left and right, especially the non-palm trees. Even if the tree is not in the way of any electric infrastructure or a building, they keep on pruning them, even old trees, and I don't know why they do that. I would not do that. I love the old trees. I would let them grow as big as they want to grow. There isn't much of a traffic, which is nice. So I sometimes come out here on the bicycle as well. But this video was shot entirely walking and using a GoPro. I'm surprised, shooting directly at the sun, that the GoPro has metering as accurate as this. This is amazing. The GoPro is useless indoors and in darkness, but in the light it's amazing how correct the metering is. I was really satisfied with the footage that came out. And here is an Aprilia I encountered. I've never seen this one. It looks like maybe a 300, 400 250. I should have spent more time on it, but I just continued to move on. Aprilia is not selling in the US market as a scooter anymore. They used to sell them, but I think it was only the small scooters that ever sold, and even those never sold in large enough quantities. What you see on the left is a beach bar, I think also a restaurant. And on the right, I think it's one of the earliest dedicated gardens, like a city park, that has some decent vegetation on it. And what's on the end of the road is one of the castles formed by an Italian family. This whole area was raided by pirates. So these castles were mostly built to fight the pirates. I assume the pirates would have been Italian as well, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of them were some Turks or somebody coming up on the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is quite shallow and not difficult to cross. It's not the ocean, it's just a sea. In fact, it's not even a sea, it's a flooded valley. If you look at prehistorical maps, the Mediterranean used to be a valley. And there are currently close to 200 cities and city-states and settlements that are flooded in this valley that have been documented by diving archaeologists. And this is a constant research. The famous ancient city of Alexandria is also underwater. So this was never like that. The area south of Spain, that narrow point where the water comes in between Spain and North Africa, that used to be completely dry, because prior to the great floods recorded in the Bible, I think those were 12,000 years ago, the water levels used to be lower. So there was no water here. As a result, there is no coral. There's no animal wildlife that depends upon coral. They don't have coral fish. They just have fish that swim in from, I guess, from the Atlantic Ocean. And now because there's a Suez Canal, I guess they could swim in from there as well. But this is not a real natural sea. This is the castle, and it is a museum. I haven't gone into the museum. Somehow I'm just jaded with all the European stuff. I'm just walking around on the outside. I must say, this is a really charming part of town. No Croatian monstrosities. It's all Renaissance Italian stuff. Really nice. I want the Italians back. I would not kick out the Croat. They are fine. But I would want the Italians to take charge of this area and bring back the businesses, bring back all the seafood and the pastas, the homemade pastas and the dessert and all of that. You really notice that the Croats are not a seafaring people. They do eat some seafood, but it's not a specialty. Much of what you see at the stores is really land-based. All the kind of a pseudo-Italian style. Like they have the Italian style salamis and prosciutto and pancetta and things like that. But they are locally made. This is very charming. I can only imagine what this place was like in the 17th century. It must have been spectacular. With all the Italian foods and culture. Now there is a part of the coast that had been a part of the Hungarian kingdom from the very earliest days, something like the 11th century. That too was originally Roman, so I guess it comes to an argument, yes, the Italians were here first, but the Hungarian kingdom and therefore the Croatians possessed it for maybe 1,000 years, and it's part of modern-day Croatia as well. I have never gone there. I was gonna ride the bus all the way up to Trieste, which is officially legally Italy right now, But then I changed my mind because I planned wrongly, and I didn't realize how much of a ride it is. It's an 11-hour drive with the bus non-stop. So I changed my mind about that. Lots of teeny tiny small cars here. Basically, if you look at one of these tiny European cars with 4 seats in it, if you take out the rear 2 seats, you end up with a smart car. The smart car is really not an extraordinary miniaturized car. It's just one of these small cars, but they took out the rear 2 seats, and that's what you end up with. You end up with a short wheelbase and an even more space-saving design. But if you look at any of these small 4-seater cars you look at, they're really not bigger than a smart car. It's just that they have 4 seats in them rather than the 2. This is a very rural area. It's not like Ragusa at all. Ragusa is big. It has a lot more. It's more of a city. You can see so many buildings packed up next to each other. Not family houses that like you see here, but that much bigger stuff. Would I recommend that you visit this area? It's a lot cheaper than Italy, I would tell you that. The rental is roughly half the price of what I saw even in Trieste. I did consider doing a side trip from Budapest to Trieste, but the prices are basically New York prices. Here you can get a discount, but the discount means is that you're not going to get the Italian food. You're not going to get the sophistication that comes with Italy. So I guess if I came back again, I don't think I'm ever going to come back, but like if you wanted to see it for the first time, I think you would want to see the Palace of Diocletian in Splata. You would want to see Ragusa just for a day dedicated to each. I would do that, but then I would continue the trip down to Greece. Greece is less expensive than Italy and still has great food, great culture. I'm not impressed by Croatian culture. Zagreb, the bus station was really underwhelming. The views of the city that I saw were really much dirtier and poorer and far less artistic than Budapest. Although they had some technology. This area on the Dalmatian coast, it really feels like second world people living in a first world area and having the money of first world. I mean, these people are not, they are not poor, not even moderate. I would say they are pretty loaded. Not rich, but they definitely have their luxury cars and they have plenty of money. I assume that people from Croatia who moved here would have been the most money, the most artistic, the most educated, because they are the ones who would care to live in beautiful old homes like this. And this is prime real estate, so you would also have to have money to be able to afford it. This is a cute little old church. I think this structure itself is from the 16th or 17th century, but the basis of the church is much older than that. So all of the churches that I saw here really started out much earlier, like I don't know, the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, and then they were knocked down and then they built up again. That villa on the left is really nice. This whole curvy road I really enjoyed. And it's all old, classical, charming architecture, nothing modern, which is the way it should be. I can't say the same thing about the whole coast. And this whole walk is maybe 3 or 4 miles until you get to the bottom of it, and that's it, no more. I'm sure there is more if you go north, but not uninterrupted. There were all these ugly modern installations everywhere. This is the beach. when you come out here in the summer, this is how narrow it is. It's a very narrow beach, really. It's just a little bit of sand and gravel next to the greenway. And I remember from Ragusa, the cost of doing anything there was just so expensive. You had to pay to get into this beach area, and there was a beach bar, and everything was New York prices as well. So it's not saving any money either. The beach bars are pretty expensive even now, and even the restaurants are pretty expensive, to be honest. And there are some buildings that are abandoned. Nothing seems to be done with them. Not this one, but some of the others. Even though this is prime real estate, so it must be an issue of property rights. I really would not allow any of these buildings to languish like this. I would rent them out, at least so long that nobody wants to develop them. Somebody could take control of them and renovate them and rent them out, really. An interesting tidbit about Croatia and Croatian law is that psychoactive plants such as sacred mushrooms and truffles, for example, are not sold here, but they can be ordered via the mail from Amsterdam, and it's legal for them to be delivered. So I seized upon the opportunity and ordered a small box already. This is one of those tiny cars I was talking about. Take off the rear two seats and you have a smart car. And maybe, they shortened the front a little bit. So that's how they achieved this total square, short wheelbase, four-wheeled car that is almost like a mobility scooter on steroids. This is an area on the right where there was a whole bunch of building complex that used to be a hotel that is totally abandoned. Nobody's doing anything. That's such a waste. Another electric scooter, really popular here, but you only see those under age 30 that use these scooters, which probably means that 20 years from now everybody's going to be on them. This is all walking. I did it by walking because it allows me more detail and more scrutiny than riding a bike. And I managed to also forget my GoPro attachment that would allow me to attach it either to my body or to my bicycle. So it's just easier to do it this way. This is the beach. This is where people come during the summertime. So the beaches are really not glorious. There are a few shops where you could buy stuff, but almost everything is closed on Sunday. This is really strange coming from the US, especially New York. Even in Budapest, a lot of things are closed, but not everything. So at least you have some, because it's a big city, even though it's the same European style, nobody wants to work on the weekend. But there are a few places where you could go. Not here. There are maybe, if you walk 5 miles, then you will come across one little joint that might be open on Sunday. And same thing with holidays. I mean, Christmas time, New Year's, my goodness. Nothing was open. Even on secondary holidays, like the Epiphany, I never even knew about this holiday, but I found out when I came here because everything was closed. This is a nice area where I went in. This is how the streets were back in the old days when the Italians had the control. You can see that the government didn't really lay down the law. Like the houses are just put next to each other in a zigzagging fashion, no order really. Some of them stick out a little bit or are placed at an angle. Who cares? Italian nonchalance. But these streets are very narrow, so finally the cars that keep on trying to run me over, they don't come in, which is really nice. It's only scooters and bicycles and pedestrians like myself. This is a plaza, more electric scooting, very good. This is a plaza. I assume these places were full of stores back in the day, but now there is only one store in it. And it seems like some of these houses are not even inhabited. Or if they are, whoever lives there really doesn't give a damn. This plaza should be filled with stores, and the only way to do that is to have the Italians take control. The Hungarians could also take control, or the Austrians. The Hungarian crown had the entire Dalmatian coast here and there for short periods throughout history, but it was never really either a Croatian or a Hungarian domain. Same thing with Austria. Austrians took it after pushing the Turks out, but the Germans never really settled here. What's interesting is that the House of Habsburg thought of the Italians as a threat, and they actively supported and pushed for the Slavification of this area. At first they wanted to Germanize it, but no Germans wanted to settle here, so they pushed for Slavs to come in. And I guess they have been successful because the Italians have been totally kicked out. Although I doubt that this is a final situation. I seriously doubt that. If Dalmatia survives the coming war and earth changes and turmoil and everything that's already upon us, I doubt that this place is going to stay a part of either Croatia or anything Slavic or Hungarian, whatever is going to happen. During the Balkan War, when the Serbs tried to muscle their way in and they tried to take control of everything, or to retain control, because Slovakia was really a Serb empire that the French awarded to Serbia. This place, the Dalmatian coast, was still hopping with tourists and everything. What I heard was that you could hear artillery fires going off in the distance, and yet there was a chess tournament, there were people on the beach, like as if nothing happened. So this area, Dalmatia, is really a separate region, very much different from the rest of Croatia. This is a Volkswagen Scirocco that I spotted. This is the new version, the most recent version. Back in the 70s, when I was a teenager living in Europe, I would admire the original, the first version of this car. This was really a Volkswagen Golf that Volkswagen gave to the Italians to redesign to make a sports hatch. And the Italians just changed the proportions slightly and moved points from here and there just by a few inches, and that totally changed it, and it turned into such a cool looking car. I love that car, the original Scirocco. Even the new one looks good, but the first generation is the one I would really like to own. Back on the beach. Such a nice day. When there is sun and it's warm, it's really nice, even in January. Not so much on cold and windy days. And there isn't much foliage, so just after I shot this video, several wildfires broke out. And the smoke just overwhelms the entire coast. And it's really poisonous. As you inhale it, I got a headache. You really feel like you're getting poisoned. When you look at these narrow Italian streets, you really realize why the small-bodied Vespa was even invented. In fact, the big wide-bodied Vespas didn't even exist. In the beginning, in the late 1940s, when Piaggio came up with this thing, they just did the small Vespa, and it makes total sense, because in an area like this you just want a glorified bicycle that goes a little faster, doesn't break any sweat. You can put a passenger on it, you can shop. I used to own a whole bunch of scooters, not Vespas but the same style, and you can pack so much between your feet on that platform. It totally makes sense. I mean, you can't even drive a car into these narrow streets, but you could ride your Vespa. So when the first Vespa hit the market, it was slam dunk, and you understand why. Although this car somehow came in here, I wonder how he would have driven in here, how that's even legal. But then Italian law enforcement is really lax. And there are all these side openings, these little alleys where you can barely squeeze in walking. I assume if there was gang warfare, which is so typical of Italian cultures, there's this constant violence, taking revenge on people, not even organized crime, just clan warfare. That's where you would have been stabbed to death walking home late at night. But this is total scooter world, and I guess what's going to happen now is that the electrics are going to take over, because they are so much easier, cheaper to operate. You don't need to register anything. If they can do 30 miles an hour, that's totally enough. Nothing more is needed. But I'm on foot, I'm walking. This whole Italian Renaissance architecture and environment, though, is only a few blocks from the water. It's only 3-4 blocks, and then there's the main road, and it's all ugly modern Croatian stuff. But this is what brings the tourist revenues in. Without this classical architecture, nobody would come here. I mean, maybe a few people would come to be on a beach that's cheaper than the Italians, but this is a mega tourist spot, this whole Dalmatian coast. And this is why, because of the artistry, the environment. Imagine if the Italian food was also here, which it isn't. This is the Church of Saint Stephen, last rebuilt in the 19th century. So this is not an ancient structure, but the original was built many centuries ago. There were some Slavs present even during Roman times. In fact, Slav is an English word which or slave is an English word which derives from Slav. The Romans did not have a word for slave, they just called everybody a Slav, which in many cases they were, and they were purchased. Enslavement of a population during conquest did happen, but it was not frequent. For the most part, the Romans allowed the local economy to continue. They even allowed the local ruling classes to remain. That's how in the Bible you read that Herod is the king of Judea, but Judea itself is a Roman province. So the Romans didn't really enslave all that many people. They purchased slaves, typically Slavic peoples, from neighboring empires and provinces and places, or even from Slavic countries themselves that were willing to sell whoever they did not like. That is yet another church, or at least a church tower. That is really attractive. But the area is not nearly as built in as Ragusa would be. This was very much the countryside. So charming. It would be even nicer if they banned all the cars. When you walk around in a Dutch city where there are hardly any cars, it's like time travel back to hundreds of years ago. Everybody's just walking or on bicycles. I am living in one of these stone structures, and I can tell you they have no insulation, which is kind of okay because the winter is short and it isn't that cold. But you do need some heating. If they had insulation, maybe you could survive without any heat at all. And I'm shooting straight into the sun, and the metering is so accurate. I don't think you could do better adjusting metering manually. And here I'm coming to the end of things. There really isn't that much farther down. Certainly nothing nice, and then it becomes an ugly airport area, industrial, and that's the end of it. So this is just a few miles of stretch that you have that are the ruins of a Venice that once was. My last trip to Dalmatia for sure. It is charming, but it lacks the sophistication of all the food and everything you would get from Hungary, Austria, Italy. Stunning views, really so nice. on a sunny afternoon. You can see the nicest parts of the coast, and in the distance that's actually Splata or Split. I assume this would be a beach in the summer as well. You can see that walkway to walk into the water. And at this point I start walking back, and because the sun is in my back, I was hoping for even better footage. But the first part, most of this video I took, came out pretty good. Even though there really isn't any great food here, you can buy a lot of stuff for free. So if you are renting a place with a decent, well-equipped kitchen, you can cook up a lot. Oranges seem to be local and really cheap. So I've been making crepe de Suzette a lot and drinking Screwdriver's vodka with orange juice, freshly squeezed. And enjoying some of the cheap Austrian chocolates. They are so cheap. Not even half, roughly more like a third the price of the US. You can get pretty much everything you could get here in New York, but for 3-4 times as much. This place was a part of Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia was a socialist country, but it was never communist, it was never a part of the Soviet bloc. In fact, it was independent of both the Warsaw Pact and NATO. And it was a pseudo-state for sure. It has no chance of surviving on the long run. But it was independent and was one of the first countries to be declared the third world. What this expression originally meant was that you were not aligned either with the US or with the Soviet Union. India was another of these third world countries. Today, obviously, we are using these labels to identify a country based on level of development. Small Citroen, really a small car, 4 doors. So many tiny cars like that, and of course smart cars as well. I have seen 4-door smart cars also. They look weird. I mean, what's the point of having a 4-door smart car when you can get any of these little cars that are about the same size? They seem to have no laws against the cars going anywhere. So long that you can squeeze in, you can go in and also park anywhere. Here's another car parking on the right side. Everybody else is parking on the left side. I don't even think there is a law. So long that a car can squeeze in, you're good. And you can see how they prune all these trees, which I think is really cruel and pointless. Maybe to limit the shadow, I don't know why. Without tourism, I would think this place would probably be just a second world country, like the rest of Croatia. But I think tourism is bringing in so much money that these people are living in the first world. They have all the technology, all the amenities, all the luxuries that you would want. There aren't that many stores, really. If this place was Italian, I assume the plaza like this would be packed with little stores selling food and drinks. It's also low season. I mean, it's not even low season, it's dead season. Check out this underpass, really medieval looking. I went in. Very charming. Another scooter. And more small cars, but also a lot of mid-sized cars, and even some trucks and SUVs, full-sized, are driven in here. If I had a car here, I would definitely want a smart car or a Fiat 500. I wouldn't even drive a standard medium-sized car. Forget it. It's just a headache. I took a slightly different route on the way back to examine the scenery a bit more thoroughly. This is just a block away from the water. Some of these houses, in fact many of them, are from the 16th century. So they would have had to be around for at least 400 years, if not longer. I wonder how many of today's panel houses are going to last for 400 or 500 years without having to be rebuilt. They are cheaper and faster to construct, but once they are built, I don't think they're going to last that long. Same thing with bicycles. That's why I promote nothing but hand-built high quality stuff on this channel. It costs more money, it takes more time to build it, but once you have it, you can really hold on to it forever. Unlike everything, almost everything that we make today, everything is cheaply and quickly made. So everybody has something, and people have too many things, really. They have too many things and they don't take care of it. They just throw it away and get another one, and everything is low quality, cheaply made, ugly. Just like you see these modern buildings, they lack the charm. And they probably won't last as long. They must have demolished a whole bunch of old houses here to put in all of this new and ugly stuff. I guess these are showers for the beach. And here I'm routing back to that charming old villa with the little church. I wonder if somebody lives in there. Probably because it's well taken care of. In which case they have direct access to the sea. The seaside gate of the villa opens right onto the water. This is the tiny church. I don't think it's ever open. I walked by so many times. I think it's permanently closed. Too bad. And this is a glimpse of the villa inside. Somebody must be living in there. I'm paying $900 a month for just a teeny tiny studio for maximum 2 people. I assume the high season price would be higher. Probably $1,200. If you want something bigger, like a 2-bedroom, it's probably going to be $2,000. So I don't think it's that much cheaper than, say, going to Miami or going to Greece for that matter, if you are in Europe. Now, the logical side trip from a city like Budapest, even from Vienna, would have been Lake Balaton. I just didn't want to do it because of the cold weather, because it's the same temperature as Vienna or Budapest, and I wanted something a bit more mild. And this is definitely warmer, a good deal warmer than in the temperate climate. But then if I went to the Balaton, I would have had all the fancy cuisines and stuff, which I so miss. And so this is my last full month stay on this trip, but on the way back I booked a few days in Budapest just to reacclimate myself to the great food and the architecture and everything before I finally take off to the US via Belgrade. I have a sleepover in Belgrade, and I should be landing in New York on the 6th of February. After 7 months of being away, I don't even know what I am. I just feel so weird. Going from place to place every month, and a new country, a new city or a new place every few weeks, it just feels so different, so bizarre. I have never been outside of the US for longer than a month. This is the first time, and probably the last one as well. I would say after Trump's inauguration, every day you spend outside of the US, if you are an American, is risking your life, basically. Because you never know when all hell is going to break loose. And I am here to predict that all hell will break loose. Not right away. That's why I'm willing to give myself a few weeks, but I'm not taking any more chances. So once I'm back in the US, that's where I'm going to stay put until history has to run its course, until we get past this war, which is just beginning. It's just the intro, what you have seen so far. Not everyone believes me, but I predicted 9/11 as well, and nobody believed me. It wasn't me predicting it, it was me reading prophecy, and Nostradamus put the date to 1999. So he was off by 2 years, but that's forgivable, given that he was predicting it 400 years in advance. So I believed in what he said, and I believe in what has been said about this period in history, which comes from so many sources, not just Nostradamus, way more than that. It's going to be weird to be back in the US, but it's weird to be here. It's just, every place is just so different. And I ended up spending at least a month wherever I went. Bangkok was 2 months. So that was, I guess, the longest stay. 2 months in Bangkok. And here I'm coming back to this charming little center with the castle. I really like this place. Whoa, all these scooters. I wonder why anybody would want to own a car in a place like this when the temperature is 50 degrees even in the winter. It's just human stupidity. You really don't need to dress up all that much even if you're on a scooter. So what's the point of driving all these cars? There's always just one person sitting in it. Utter waste of space and money. Not to mention energy. Even a small car weighs about 1.5 tons. Your average scooter or motorcycle is rarely over 500 pounds. That's 1/4 ton. A fisherman. This is how the whole coast should be, one big greenway along the entire length. Sunset, so nice. Sunsets are really beautiful here.
I'll be back.